How about that early Christmas gift for Jet fans last night? And Gabriel Vilardi helping out and being a big part of it. But I'm sure that's exactly what he wanted for Christmas, coming a little bit early.
Yeah, it's a mini stocking stuffer, eh? Where were you when the Vilardi revenge game happened? That's what last night was. I mean, it was perfect, right? Like for outside of it being, like 2:30 a.m. when the game ended, the game itself was exactly what we all would have hoped for. It was PL Dudbois at one end of the ice, and then Gabe Vilardi spearheading one of the more dominant performances by any line in a game so far this season. I mean, it was tremendous to watch. It was even better to us because, I mean, especially the way the San Jose game went and then ended. The question about, who's going to take over the goal scoring, who's going to be able to put the puck in the net for the Jets. And it's the entire top line that just steps up and says, hey, why don't we just carry you guys for 6 to 8 weeks? And it very well might happen that way. But at least for one night, that was about as good as it gets there. And, I mean, you saw the return of Vilardi to the promising player that a lot of people hoped he would be. Ehlers, now he's officially back so far this season. Scheifele being that one center. And then Vesnabak is back in between the pipes. So a bit of a tough blow to start the week, but all positive here to wind out the work week here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, perspective is important because, I mean, the Jets didn't have a great start. They battled back. It was a tie game. And that was a dominant performance for the better part of the next 30 minutes, and they just didn't score. And obviously the power play still needs work, and they need to kind of figure it out without Kyle Connor. But last night, the way the game started, they were pissed off at the calls and, what didn't get called leading to the first goal of the Kings. And then to have a goal that'll go in once a season or every 2 seasons on a crazy angle off a helmet and a post and in. And all of a sudden the team's down 2-0. And I mean, there are 2-0 deficits, and then there are 2-0 deficits against the Los Angeles Kings. The more I think about it, I think that second frame where the Jets took over the game was the most impressive 20 minutes of hockey this team has played all season long when you consider the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, on top of it, too, 3 and 4 nights, second of a back-to-back.
Time zones.
And you, yeah, right? Like, and you come out there and you flip the game on its head in 20 minutes. It was just awesome to watch. It was so great. Because, I mean, look, going into that stretch there, I think myself and a lot of Jets fans were like, look, get the win in Anaheim, get the win in San Jose, whatever happens in LA happens at that point, right? And you take 2 out of 3 and you're feeling pretty good about yourself. But to take 2 of 3 and to do it against the Kings in the fashion that they did was extremely impressive. The Kings have kind of had the Jets' number these past few seasons as well. So everything's stacked against them, and they find a way to get it done there. I mean, it's if there were – I always kind of hesitate to do this, Hus, because, we're not even into the new year yet. But if there were any doubts that this team was different than last year's team, I just don't know how you can hold back anymore, right? Hey, and on top of it, too, like how many games in a row giving up 3 goals or less, and they do that again to one of the more explosive teams offensively in the NHL. It was, I mean, gut check, resilient, whatever adjective you want to throw out there. The Jets just went ahead and they pulled out a big one in LA, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it was. A performance that, I don't think a lot of people expected it, and I bet there was plenty of Jet fans with that 9:30 start that saw what happened in the first period and said, well, I'm out, and I'll see the guys tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk and hear about it and how they can get back on track against the
Avalanche.
Avalanche.
About that, to be honest.
and then stuck around, and if you did stuck around, it was well worth it. Let's talk about that line. And I think, let's start with Ehlers, because Ehlers was the catalyst. He had been shooting a lot lately. He'd been missing the net quite a bit. I mean, he was frustrated in San Jose, especially on the power play. And credit to the Sharks for the way they just sort of collapsed. And, there was no shooting lanes. They were blocking it. They were taking the pucks. He had a couple of those rockets over the shoulder of Cam Talbot. And I've often thought that he uses a stick it's like he basically grabbed one of Tyler Myers' sticks before he left, and it seems kind of too long. And sometimes I think that affects maybe some of the stick handling. but man, can he rip it. And those 2 goals, signature Ehlers goals, in addition to everything that he was doing when the puck was on his stick with that world-class speed.
Yeah, I mean the one where you're on the rush, on the move. How many guys are catching him when he's skating that fast? I mean, look, for Vilardi to hit him in stride, great pass to kick it all off there. But I mean, honestly, how many guys in the NHL can move that fast through the middle of the ice and then in stride without breaking a step go bar down like that? You know what I mean? Like it's high level hockey at its best, and that's Ehlers has been that guy for. I mean, he's probably been there for like 2 or 3 weeks now. It took him maybe a bit longer than some of us anticipated earlier in the year when he made his return. But I mean, he's back to the guy where we used to have argument. Why isn't he getting 20 minutes a night? Well, good news. He's going to be getting 20 minutes a night for the next 2 months, essentially, at the very least. And if he keeps playing like that, it's going to be 20 plus minutes a night, for about 4 or 5 months after that. I mean, they were all great. No doubt about it. I mean, you don't kind of luck your way into a 4-point night if you're Gabe Vilardi and, Scheifele getting maybe a little bit of hockey karma, sticking up for Connor, and then gets 2 empty netters to add onto the score sheet there. But Ehlers, when he's going like he is right now, there's 6, 7, 8 guys in the league that can do what he does. It's so fun to watch. All the early season worries are completely out the window there, and you wonder how high the ceiling might be for this line, Huss. Vilardi looked great early in the year, didn't get much of a chance until the injury, and you could see him. He plays well with the really skilled guys, like he just gets it. And I think we haven't even seen him totally utilize his best asset yet, which is his shot. Like imagine once he's able to rip off a couple off an Ehlers or a Scheifele feed. So there's a lot of reason to be excited about what that top line can do moving forward here. And yeah, they might have to do that on a pretty consistent basis here.
Good comment in chat here from Brendan Matheson. Ehlers had 5 points in his first 13. Now he has 15 in his last 15. He's playing lights out hockey and has elevated his game since going up to play with Mark. Ehlers, Scheifele, Vilardi played their best game. I think we all would agree on that as a group. And, when we talk about where Ehlers is fit, I mean, I had some guy going like, see, look what happens when you put Ehlers on the first line. I mean, it's not like Ehlers has never played with Scheifele before. But during this period, and this included the time with Kyle Connor on the line before Connor was injured against the Ducks. From my perspective, Brandon, I'll get your take on this. Scheifele seems to be more comfortable with Ehlers as these games have gone on. And, it didn't look great the first game. I mean, Ehlers did a couple things where there were some offsides and back pass to no one that went the other way. And some of that uncertainty between the line mates, it just seems like it's diminished game after game. And now in the absence of Kyle Connor, those guys have stepped up. Vilardi, we talked about how big he was yesterday, coming together for a signature game for that line. And to what you mentioned earlier, and I kind of did at the start, you do wonder what the ceiling is for this line, because we saw how devastating they can be. Putting up 11 points, being a plus 15 against a Los Angeles Kings team that frankly just doesn't have that happen to them.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I've always liked the way it's funny because we heard these whispers like a while, like I don't know how true these were, but that Mark Scheifele didn't totally love playing with Nikolai Ehlers, right? Like there was a level of unpredictability that or maybe he was just more comfortable with Wheeler and Connor for so many years. You know what I mean? Like there was always that thrown out there.
Yeah,
but it was funny because whenever they were put together. And you look at the numbers, you're like, well, who cares if he doesn't like it? Like, you don't like it, you're on track to make $8-9 million a year with these kind of numbers. Like, you might like the paycheck, even if you don't like your time on the ice together. But I mean, there is definitely a bit of it's a process playing with Ehlers, right? Because he's very untraditional in how he attacks the offensive zone. I mean, on the rush, I think him and Scheifele play off each other well. I think of that goal at home a few games back where it was just bing, bang, 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 boom all over the offensive zone, and Ehlers goes bar down there where, they're able to play off each other nicely like that. But, Mark Scheifele, he kind of mentions this too, that offensively he tries to simplify his game, and he says that like from an NHL All-Star perspective, it's not very simple in terms of what he does skill-wise, but there's a lot of let's go in there and try to forecheck and move it around that way. And that's how he played with Wheeler and Connor for a long time. And I think having Vilardi on that line kind of gives them, or at least gives Mark Scheifele a bit more of a grounded complement to play with. And now they're a little more accustomed to, when Ehlers gets the puck and he starts, winging around the offensive zone, going in circles, that, you've got to try to find some space in the zone, some open areas to work with, because he's going to find you with a pass, or he's going to find a lane to shoot, and you're going to create a rebound, right? So I've never had a problem with Scheifele and Ehlers together. I don't know how much they have either, but I think that they're, anytime you put smart hockey players together, I think they generally find a way to figure it out. And I think that's the case of what we're seeing right here, and that, Vilardi, even though being the youngster on the line, can be the defensive conscience, and on top of that, be a playmaker and be a finisher if he's given that opportunity as well.
Well, let's kind of expand on that. It had been a rough start for Vilardi. I mean, he had 2 pretty nice games, got hurt, missed 2 months, a little bit slow coming back, and then does that in a game that obviously meant so much to him. What do you think last night does for Gabe Vilardi as we move into this big homestand heading into Christmas?
Yeah, springboard. I honestly don't know how it isn't, right? Like, I mean, to get that off your back and then to play the way that you did there, I mean, for any young guy, confidence just must be through the roof right now. And you're given the opportunity, you have the confidence and the trust of your coaching staff. Don't be shocked if we see a bit of a Vilardi heater over the next handful of weeks here. I think it's wild too. I honestly think we haven't seen him play his best hockey yet. I think he's going to get better and better and better as we move along. And the guy that we're seeing right now is pretty damn valuable. Like, it's wild to think that there's still another level that he can get to here. And like I mentioned earlier there, Huss, I mean, once he starts ripping a couple, and if he gets a little, I wouldn't mind seeing him be a little selfish with the puck and start shooting it a little bit more. Once we see that element of his game added in, I think that top line is going to be pretty damn interesting. And it's funny too, because we saw the Dubois-Vilardi comparisons all night and throughout the morning as well. The player cards and things like that. Like, obviously there's no Jet fan that would do a Dubois for Vilardi trade straight up at this point. I wonder, Huss, how much the Kings would have to throw in a Dubois and Vilardi trade to make that palatable from a Winnipeg perspective.
Yeah, they'd also have to eat 60% of the salary.
Yeah, right? Like, how much retainer and then how much compensation on top of that do you want to add to get this one done?
Well, it's actually funny you bring that up, because I see SK, who's always clapping on Chevy, and Spency. Those put it this way, the Chevy critics are pretty quiet right now and grasping onto a few things that probably are not true. In fact, everything that he has done from that trade through the offseason and the signings of Scheifele and Helly, like I was saying right now, can you imagine if that Hellebuck deal didn't get done? And we're sitting here coming into Christmas with an expiring contract, with Hellebuck playing the way he is, the team playing the way he is, with the uncertainty of what they do, how do they go about this. It would have been almost impossible to trade him because of how good the team is and how legitimate they are in the West and the chance that they think they have to make some noise in the playoffs. I mean, you want to talk, I'll say this right now, and this is probably going to make a few of his biggest critics roll over. But when you think about the moves that Cheveldayoff made through the summer, being patient, getting it done, getting the trade done with Dubois, bringing those new players in, the re-signing of Nemetsnikov, re-signing of Niedermayer, the dual twin extensions. If the Jets stay where they are in the standings, he'll probably be a finalist for the GM of the year, which is going to drive some people crazy. But do you not agree?
Yeah, that's how the GM of the year usually works too. It's like some guy that's up against it and they find a way to turn it around. And it's funny, you mentioned it. What would it be like if Hellebuck didn't have the extension? I don't think he's in Winnipeg right now because Edmonton couldn't get a save to save their season.
Buffalo,
New
Jersey.
Jersey was at the same point. Buffalo, like one of those teams would have been like, screw it, we'll just get him, right? So like imagine
Name
the
your
alternate.
price.
Yeah, like whatever you want. Simon Nemec, yeah, whatever. Just throw a couple first. Yeah, let's keep it going here. So it's funny to see what the alternate universe might have been like if that's the case. But yeah, I mean, I've been very critical about, a number of moves and non-moves that Chevy has made over the last, 18, 24 months. But this offseason alone was that was a grand slam. You can't argue anything other than that right now. I mean, he's nailed everything. Dubois trade.
Going back to the trade deadline last year.
Yeah. I mean, it's a few deadlines too, but like the Andrew Kopp trade was a monumental haul for what, somewhat disappointing out there in Detroit, right?
Just wait till Elias Salmonson gets here next year.
Yeah, we haven't even seen him drop in yet, but it's been pretty impressive work. There's obviously with the logjam on defense still unsolved. Like there's a few things that need to be ironed out moving forward, and maybe there's another big move or two in the offers that we'll find out in a couple of weeks' time. But the way he set this club up right now, I don't know what the major arguing point would be, in all honesty, right? Like every team in the NHL has a contract or two they would like to get rid of, in all honesty. You could kind of argue little minor points in terms of like the prospects and the development and things like that. But all in all, with where the Jets are at right now, it's been best case scenario since the season started. And you've got to give a tip of the cap to Chevy for that too, because look, if they might have signed those extensions 2 months into the season, I don't think it's the same positive vibes to start the year, right? Like to get that done before the season even started it's really hard to quantify that in terms of numbers, right? But it was a massive, massive boost to the team internally. And once they hit the ice, you could just tell that the club, in terms of its like mental health, is in a much, much better spot than they've been in years.
100%. And there's no better example of that in Scheifele. And I guess to your point, I guess there is an element of chicken or the egg with the extensions, and having him have a clear head coming in, knowing what his future was. But everything that I was just saying about Hellebuck, you could say the exact same thing about Scheifele, because, not only is he producing at, an all-star level, but honestly, if you look back at this road trip, those 3 games, especially the last 2, if you isolated some of Mark Scheifele's commitment to back checking and just doing everything he can, not going to be a Selke finalist, but doing everything he can to help his team in both ends, and compared that to what we'd seen in the last couple of years, it's night and day. And doing what he's doing right now, what would the number be for Scheif? So, it really is falling into place. And those 2 extensions are, well, the fingerprints are all over what's happening right now with this hockey team. And it certainly completely flipped the narrative about where the team was. And back to, I think it really kind of emphasized and reinforced their belief in the players that they had right now. And a lot of people around here didn't want to hear it. But they're sort of being proved right now with the way the team is playing. Moving on from those forwards, and that's, a conversation we'll be able to have throughout the year. I pulled up the game scorecard from Dom that Connor had tweeted out last night. And you saw the monster game, basically maxed out to the end for Vilardi, Ehlers, and Scheifele. Right after that, though, next up was Neal Pionk, Dylan DeMello, Josh DeMorrissey, and Brendan Dillon. And for all the talk we have, God knows the chat is 50% debate about the 6 defensemen, which is the most Canadian market thing of all time. Those guys, but Pionk in particular, is playing his ass off right now. And I'm not sure whether it's the headspace, kind of maybe refocusing or just playing hockey after everything that happened with Adam Johnson. We talked in the offseason about how we knew Pionk could be much better than he was last season. And that might be the most important thing as far as having an effect on the Winnipeg Jets' wins and losses. What have you seen of Pionk's game and how important he is and how different he looks and confident he looks as opposed to, a real tough season last year?
Yeah, that's the word I was going to use is he just looks more confident out there. And I don't know if he lost it last year or what the deal was, but I mean, he's always at his best when he's being aggressive all over the ice. Like in the neutral zone, he's very effective in terms of picking off passes and stopping plays before they happen. I don't think he's great at defending the blue line all that much, but when he can stop that before the puck even gets there, that's his biggest strength. And I think we're seeing him jump into the play more. But I mean, part of that too, Huss, is and this goes with, I mean, all the blue liners really, but I would say especially the second pair there, is you can play a lot more aggressive and confident when you know there's going to be forwards back there to support you. And we saw all too many times last year that wasn't the case. And when you remove that layer of trust, it's tough. It's tough to play effective hockey defensively in the NHL. But that's a complete 180 this year where there are guys supporting a defenseman pitching in. There are players coming back and back checking, right, providing the back pressure so you can make sure there's not much of a gap between the defenseman and the forwards and things like that. So I think specifically that second pair, but I mean the whole decor as a whole have benefited immensely from just better defensive play up front, right? Like, I mean, a full season of Niederreiter, Vilardi and Iafallo know what they're doing there, and then you remove some former players that were just lacking in the defensive department, right? Like that does a big part in this team, and specifically Pionk and Dillon just looking more effective out there on the blue line.
Oh, the chat's about to go crazy because a dog has entered the room.
Yeah,
you can bring him around. But maybe Brandon, the best example of that you're talking about with the improved defensive play was the third period last night. I mean, going in with a 3-2 lead and allowing the Kings, who have been one of the best teams in the league all year long, 6 shots on Connor Hellebuck in the most important period of the stanza. I mean, as great as the second period was in scoring the goals and coming back, that third period was almost equally as impressive as what they had done. And I mean, continuing, 18 straight with 3 goals or less? You're going to win a lot of games. Jets, I believe, now 6th in goals against in the National Hockey League, and everyone on this team has a piece of it.
That's such a crazy stat, and it's crazy. and what's wild about it too, Huss, I mean, Hellebuck, now the numbers have taken, like, they've skyrocketed, right? But this isn't a goaltending thing in terms of the goals against. Like, they're just a good defensive team. How? I just never believed this would even be possible. Especially, with the majority of the team back, right? Like the same blue line. And then, there we go. That's the reason right there.
The Bones effect. Right?
That's, to me, this is the biggest reason for optimism, Huss, is that they're just playing sustainably good defense. That's what the great teams do, right? Like, I mean, you watch Vegas, you watch Boston, you wonder why they're successful year in, year out, and they got different pieces coming in, guys getting older, all that. I mean, that's the reason why. That's the spine of your team. And they're doing that. Like, they're following that same formula. It's pretty wild to see. And then now we've gotten, and I don't think it's a coincidence either that it happens, Kyle Connor goes down here, but Vezina Buck is back, and there might be another nomination in his future down the stretch here. I mean, that's the wild part too with his early struggles, Huss. He's put together some Vezina-worthy campaigns with a bottom 10 defense in front of him. And once he gets settled in and this group continues to play the way that they have, it's going to be hard to hold him out of the top 3 by the end of the year.